Hi, good morning everyone. I thought that I would make a video explaining the format for the analysis essay. I think a lot of times it's just easier to understand what is expected this way. So this is what I'm looking for, and this is what the majority of your professor is going to be looking for. Everyone has their own style, but this pretty much sums up how you would write a 7-paragraph analysis essay. So the first thing that you want to do is put your name and your MLA heading or your APA title page. If you don't know whether you're supposed to be using MLA or APA, just send me a quick email, tell me what your major is, and I'll let you know which format to use. So put your MLA heading or APA title page on your top, every single class, every single submitted assignment. Never submit an assignment without your MLA heading or APA title page. If you use Chicago, use that. I've probably had 5 students out of the thousands I've taught who use Chicago, so I won't mention it here, but if you need help with Chicago, let me know and I'll send you some sources. All right, so that's the first thing you're going to do. If you use an MLA heading, your essay is going to start right on the same page. If you use an APA title page, you have to start on the next page. What you're going to do in order to do that is go to Insert and then go to Page Break, and that will create a new page. You always want to create a new page using Insert Page Break, because if you don't, the formatting could get all screwed up. So it may look like it's on a separate page to you. You pressed enter all the way down to the next page. But when it comes to me, based on any number of factors, it might not be on a separate page. It might be smack in the middle of your first page or something like that, and you'll lose points on formatting. So it takes 3 seconds to choose Insert Page Break. You might as well do it. Then you put your title. Always put a title. We notice if you guys don't put a title, and put an interesting title. Don't put, analysis essay or, reasons why abortion is bad. Think of something creative and interesting, eye-catching. It matters. Your audience will notice it. So you write your introduction. You want at least 5 sentences. An academic paper should never, the academic paragraph should never have fewer than 5 sentences. Anything less is just too short. You can have a lot more, but you never want to have fewer than 5. Your last sentence is going to be your thesis statement. This must be a 3-part thesis statement that states your argument and highlights the 3 main points of your argument, and it should always be the last sentence in your introduction. So here I just did a really silly one. Professor Bayens is the best professor because she makes easy to understand videos, she answers questions quickly, and she's groovy. Obviously, I'm just being silly, and I just wrote this out quickly for you guys, but this is what you're going to want to do. You state your argument. Professor Bayens is the best professor. That's your argument. And then you highlight the 3 main points. Because she makes easy to understand videos, she answers questions quickly, and she's groovy. So you have your argument and your 3 main points. This is a very important thing to remember. So your last sentence of your first paragraph, 3-part thesis statement, argument, 3 points. I know I'm reiterating this a lot, but I take off so many points for this when I do grading. I can't tell you how many essays should have gotten an A based on a lot of the writing, but end up with a C or a B because the instructions weren't followed, because there's no clear thesis statement, and therefore without a clear thesis statement, you can't have clear topic sentences. And without a clear thesis statement, your conclusion can't restate the thesis statement. So many points, according to the rubric, rely on you having this 3-part thesis statement and having it be very clear, direct, and in the correct location. So just keep that in mind. You get your next paragraph, and you use a topic sentence. It has to directly relate to your thesis statement. Okay, this is very important. All of your topic sentences must directly relate to your thesis. So the very first point is that that Professor Bayens makes easy to understand videos, which means that your topic sentence must directly relate to that. Professor Bayens makes great videos to help her students understand what is needed. So I think a lot of times you kind of want to be interesting or creative. Academic essays are not the place for doing too much of that. We love creativity. We love you guys to write things that are kind of interesting and engaging, but always clarity over creativity. If you want to write creatively, take English 120, take English 420. They're both amazing classes. We write poetry. We write, I think they might do a screenplay thing in 420. We write nonfiction and fiction, and you can be super creative. But in your academic essays, in your regular scholarly essays in your classes, always value clarity over creativity. So just be direct. It's a lot easier than it may seem. I think a lot of times students overthink what they have to do, and they actually make things harder and they make things take longer because you guys are so worried that you're not doing the right thing that you don't realize that the right thing is super easy. You say, this is what I believe, but you use third person. Don't use I, me, we, us, our, you, myself, any of those words. Always use third person, but you say, this is the argument, these are the reasons, and then you highlight the reasons. So, Professor Baines makes great videos to help her students understand what's needed. Directly relates to that first point. Then you're going to write about 5 sentences because you want 5 sentences or more in every paragraph. You're going to use one short quote, and you're going to use a signal phrase. This is another place where I take off a ton of points. If you look at the rubric, I think maybe 10 points out of the 100 is just signal phrase. It's such an easy way to get 10 points and such an easy way to lose 10 points. So a signal phrase introduces your quote. You never just start with a quote in your sentence. Quotation marks, here's the quote, that's it. No, you want to say, according to so-and-so, and then you have your quote. It's that simple. Just say, according to the author, or according to the source, whatever it may be, right there. You can be more, creative, more complicated with it, but you don't have to be. It's just really simple and straightforward. So you introduce your quote with a couple of words, comma, quotation mark, put your quote in, keep it underneath, keep it underneath a sentence long, I would say. Definitely keep it under 40 words. Anything over 40 words you want to format as a block quotation. Honestly, 5-paragraph essay, 7-paragraph essay, 500 words, 1,000 words, avoid block quotations unless you're writing a poetry essay and you want to use a block of poetry. Long quotes are not needed. They overwhelm the essay. You're going to lose points. You want to keep your quotes short and sweet. 10 words around that length is really great. And then you put your citation after your quote. You ideally don't want it to be the last sentence in your paragraph. If your professor looks at your essay, you have 3 quotes, that's great. It's the last sentence in every paragraph. We get the feeling you wrote the essay, then went back, grabbed a couple of quotes that you didn't really think about, and tacked them onto the end. You never want to do that. A research essay is written based on the research. It doesn't have research added to it. It looks very bad if you use a quote at the last sentence of each paragraph. It should be right in there. The paragraph should be about whatever the quote is about. So that's a little tip that probably no one has ever told you before. It's one of those things that professors don't really talk about. Maybe sometimes if we're sitting around drinking coffee, we do talk about it, but it's just one of those little things that kind of irks professors. If it looks like the student has just kind of added the quote onto the end of each paragraph, that's not going to fly. It's not getting you top points. So just a little thing to keep in mind. So again, now the next sentence, the next part is she answers questions quickly. So Professor Baines answers questions within 24 hours, which I try to do. And sometimes life gets in the way, as we all know, and I try to be understanding of you guys. But we're going to go with that. And, same thing. Use 5+ sentences, short quotes, use a signal phrase, make sure it's integrated. Professor Baines is one groovy chick. I just got up. It's really early. I couldn't really think of a third point. So there you go. 5 sentences, 1 short quote, and make sure it's integrated. Now we get to the counter argument. This is an important thing. You don't want your counter argument to just be dropped into the essay. If suddenly you read this, oh, Professor Baines is great. She answers questions. She makes videos. She's a groovy chick. Then it just says Professor Baines is a jerk. You're going to go, whoa, wait, you just said things. Now, why are you saying these negative things? This doesn't make any sense. What's wrong with you? You're all wishy-washy. You're going back and forth. I don't understand your argument. This doesn't support your argument. So you always want to introduce the counter-argument. The opposition may say that Professor Baines isn't the best. So you want to introduce that counter-argument. Make sure you highlight the strongest points of your opposition. There's something called the straw man fallacy, and that's when we highlight an argument that the opposition probably wouldn't even make. or the weakest argument of the opposition. You have to avoid that. The person reading it is going to notice that immediately, especially if they're on the other side. So, an example of this, if we were going to get political, would be, Democrats want to kill all babies. This is not an argument that any Democrats are making. You're knocking down an argument that doesn't exist. That's a straw man. You've built up a fake argument and you're knocking it down. So you want to highlight the strongest argument of your opposition, because the only way that you can truly win an argument is if you highlight the strongest arguments and then you show why they're wrong. I have no arguments as to why I'm not the best professor, so I'll just leave that blank there. But you highlight the strongest argument, I'm pointing, because, okay, Professor Baines isn't the best because she keeps pointing at her screen rather than using the mouse. So you write 5 sentences or more, use a short quote, use a signal phrase, make sure it's cited, all of that. Then you get to your rebuttal. So those who say that Professor Baines isn't the best are wrong because, and then you refute what they said. You prove, why that argument is wrong. So then your conclusion. In conclusion, now this is one thing. Also, I think about 10 points of your grade go towards your conclusion being long enough, not too short, at least 5 sentences, and restating the thesis statement in a fresh way. If you don't paraphrase it and use it word for word, you're not going to get full credit. If you don't restate it at all, you're definitely not going to get full credit. So what you want to do is restate it in a fresh way. My favorite way to do this, the way that I like the best when students do, and it really fleshes it out and it definitely helps you reach at least 5 sentences, is to restate each point in its own sentence. So, in conclusion, Professor Baines is the best professor I've had at APUS. One of the reasons that this is true is because she makes these great videos that are really easy to understand. Another reason why Professor Baines is so great is because she answers emails very quickly. I was trying to remember my statement. And she's also such a groovy chick. You should maybe avoid using chick. I don't know. It might be offensive to some people, but I just figured I'd be a little silly today and you guys might remember this a little better. And then, these are the reasons why Professor Baines is the best. So it's really simple. Don't overthink it. Just restate it. You don't have to use it in separate sentences, though I just think it's a really nice way to kind of bring everything together. Then we are going to do another page break. Your works cited, your reference page has to be on a separate page. Don't use the enter key. Sorry, something just caught my attention, but so don't use the enter key, use page break and label it works cited, centered, or reference page. If you're using MLA, works cited. If you're using APA, reference page, you want your sources to be in alphabetical order and use a hanging indent. So a hanging indent would mean that you have your I should have done this first. Okay, so for this, no, it does this sometimes. I'm actually really glad that it did that because I can show you the little trick, because it's probably happened to you guys where you want to use a hanging indent. You press the tab key here and the whole thing goes in, and that's wrong. So just come to the end right here, press the enter key, then you press the tab key, and there is the hanging indent. So I'm glad that happened because I've had a lot of students ask about that. So now you can see how to do that. So alphabetical order, use a hanging indent. Every sentence after, every line after the first one is going to be indented 1 tab space. So if you got a lot going on here and this is 2-3 sentences after the first one, you're going to indent all of them. So this is pretty much the format. One other thing is make sure that your paper is double spaced. Go to home. You go to this little thing with these little arrows up and down. Click that, 2.0. Every paper, every class. Okay? So what do we remember? Every paper, every class, make sure you use your title page or your MLA heading. Every paper, every class, cite your quotes, use proper citations. Every paper, every class, double spaced. Every paper, every class, hanging indent, alphabetical order. And that's pretty much how you write a 7-paragraph essay. I hope that this was helpful to you guys. and that you don't make fun of me too much to your friends.